person. Today, we will examine this ingenious poster, which spirals us from the Big Bang at the center to the present at the end. Key moments in the universe's history are illustrated and annotated in this spiral timeline. Each 90-degree arc of the band represents 1 billion years. In the first 2 turns, we encounter the emergence of cosmic structures. In the next, the formation of the solar system with Earth's geology and early biology. And in the final 180 degrees, the evolution of life and hominin species. We do not know what came before, but we do know that 13.8 billion years ago, the universe was compressed in an ultra-hot soup of plasma known as the Big Bang. Things evolved quickly during the first fraction of a second, when a violent inflation stretched the microscopic universe by at least 26 orders of magnitude. Then inflation stopped, and the universe continued expanding at a more moderate pace. About 380,000 years later, it had cooled enough to become transparent, with the last echo of the ancient plasma forming an all-encompassing glow called the cosmic microwave background, or CMB. The universe was now transparent, but the lights were still off. The Dark Ages lasted about 100 million years, during which gravity pulled simple atoms together into ever larger clumps of gas. As these clumps grew massive enough, the temperature and pressure in their cores triggered nuclear fusion, giving birth to the first generation of stars. These stars were so massive that they depleted their fuel in just a few million years before exploding as the first supernovae, releasing new elements like lithium, carbon, and oxygen. The fresh material combined with the remaining gas to form redder, smaller population 2 stars, as well as the first planets. All of the newly formed substance organized into rotating disks with visible black holes at their centers devouring material around them. These early black holes, known as quasars, reached their peak 12.2 billion years ago. Other structures were calmer and spherical rather than disc-shaped. These globular clusters peaked in formation around 11 billion years ago. The star formation rate peaked at the so-called cosmic noon, the era when most of the universe's stars and black holes were forged. Large spiral galaxies began to form around 10 billion years ago through galaxy mergers, which set off new waves of star formation. Our galaxy's sister, the Andromeda Galaxy, is thought to have taken on a spiral shape first, followed by the Milky Way around 9.3 billion years ago. The Milky Way's last major merger occurred approximately 8.5 billion years ago, when it incorporated the Gaia Enceladus galaxy. Several stars we see in the night sky were born in the following 2 billion years, including Barnard's star, Luyten's star, Ross 128, Arcturus, Aldebaran, Gliese 581, Alpha Centauri, Lalande 21185, Mira, and Tau Ceti. Dark energy, a force that accelerates the universe's expansion, grew to the point where it surpassed gravity, the dominant force up until then. A short-lived, massive primal star exploded as a supernova, enriching the surrounding molecular cloud and seeding it with material to form several star systems. Within just a few million years, density waves shaped a protoplanetary disk that accreted into the Sun and the rest of the solar system, including Earth. Proto-Earth was a molten ball of rock just starting to solidify when it collided with Theia, a planet about half its size. The impact threw part of Earth's molten crust into space, and the debris that stayed in orbit eventually formed the Moon. Back then, the inner solar system was chaotic, with frequent asteroid and meteorite impacts. Despite this, liquid water likely existed on Earth's surface. Around 4.2 billion years ago, a period known as the Late Heavy Bombardment saw a spike in impacts, which probably melted Earth's surface again. We do not know whether life was spontaneously created on Earth or arrived from space. RNA-based life likely existed before any other organisms on Earth's surface. After the heavy bombardment ended, DNA and proteins appeared, marking the emergence of the last universal common ancestor of all life. The first first organisms were probably prokaryotic cells with DNA. Around 3.8 billion years ago, the atmosphere became saturated with water vapor. When the Earth cooled, the vapor condensed, resulting in a pluvial period that lasted several 100 million years. The heavy and prolonged rain led to a global ocean. At this moment, early photosynthetic cells began pumping oxygen into the ocean. The mix of water, oxygen, and rocks oxidized iron, creating the first banded iron formations. Over the next billion years, green volcanic and sedimentary rocks, such as the Nuvuaqituk greenstone belt, were formed. Around 3.5 billion years ago, microbial communities called stromatolites built layered structures. Earth's molten core generated a magnetic field strong enough to shield the planet from harmful solar radiation, which has since protected the atmosphere and life. Meanwhile, the crust shifted and collided. The first known supercontinent, Valbara, assembled from some of the earliest continental fragments. During this era, carbon dioxide levels reached some of the highest in Earth's history. This greenhouse blanket kept the young planet warm despite the faint sun, allowing liquid water and life. Deep within what is now South Africa, one of the oldest surviving pieces of crust formed, the Johannesburg Dome. Not long after, Earth experienced the largest meteor impact in its history. The massive collision reshaped the crust, leaving traces that can still be seen today in ancient rocks. By 3 billion years ago, many organisms used retinal pigments to capture sunlight, giving Earth a purple hue from space, known as the Purple Earth. Earth's first ice age likely occurred during the Pongola glaciation, when ice spread across young continents despite a methane and carbon dioxide-rich greenhouse atmosphere. Around this time, the first long-lived continental assembly, came together. By 2.7 billion years ago, Earth's hotter mantle produced unusual volcanic rocks known as komatiites, which released heat and gases and provided chemical energy for microbial life. Earth's continents later gathered into a vast landmass called Nuna, likely the first time most of the crust united in one stable supercontinent. By 2.4 billion years ago, cyanobacteria using chlorophyll began releasing oxygen. This great oxidation event ended the purple, retinal-dominated world and transformed the atmosphere forever. At about the same time, a huge meteor struck what is now Russia, leaving the Swavjervi crater, one of the oldest impact scars still visible on Earth. Our planet then entered its first long and severe ice age, the Huronian glaciation. Triggered by falling methane and rising oxygen, ice stretched from the poles toward the tropics for hundreds of millions of years. As oxygen accumulated in the atmosphere, the Great Oxygenation Event transformed Earth's chemistry, ending anaerobic dominance and paving the way for complex life. At 2.1 billion years ago, fossils revealed the first known multicellular life. The first eukaryotic cells appeared when an ancient archaeon merged with a bacterium, creating cells with nuclei and mitochondria, the ancestors of all complex life. Orogenes, or mountain-building events, raised some of the earliest long-lived mountain ranges. It is thought that viruses capable of infecting bacteria, known as bacteriophages, emerged around this time. By 1.8 billion years ago, winds had already carved deserts, leaving behind the oldest preserved sand dunes. Continental collisions raised vast mountain belts, such as the Svekofenian in Europe and the Mazatzal in North America. Around 1.5 billion years ago, the Nuna supercontinent began to break apart. By 1.4 billion years ago, colonies of blue-green algae, or cyanobacteria, were thriving in the oceans. Around this time, a cyanobacterium entered a eukaryotic cell and became a permanent resident. This endosymbiosis resulted in the chloroplast, which enabled algae and later plants to perform oxygenic photosynthesis. Around 1.3 billion years ago, volcanic rifts produced immense lava flows that concentrated metals into some of the world's oldest and richest copper deposits. By 1.1 billion years ago, some protists had evolved the ability to attack and consume other eukaryotes. This marks the earliest evidence of predator-prey dynamics in the fossil record, a turning point that drove greater cellular complexity. At the same time, fossils show the presence of red algae such as Bangiomorpha, the oldest known multicellular eukaryote. Dinoflagellates and the branching alga Glenobotridion appeared, showing early experiments with multicellular forms. By 900 million years ago, Earth's landmasses had fused into the supercontinent Rodinia. Centered on what is now North America, it gathered nearly all continents into a single vast landmass surrounded by the superocean Morovia. By 750 million years ago, amoebas, Paramecia, and the testate amoeba Melanocerilium appeared, showing the rise of more complex protists and early multicellular life. The Cryogenian Ice Age included two of the most extreme glaciations in Earth's history, the Sturtian, around 700 million years ago, and the Marinoan, about 640 million years ago. During these snowball Earth events, ice may have stretched nearly from pole to equator. Not long after, the first true animals appeared, sponges. These simple filter feeders lacked organs and nerves, but their porous bodies circulated water to capture food, marking the dawn of the animal kingdom. Around 600 million years ago, ultraviolet light in the upper atmosphere split oxygen molecules, and the freed atoms combined to form ozone. This new ozone layer formed a shield against UV radiation, making Earth's surface safer for complex life. Fossils from 550 million years ago show the first clear evidence of fungi already playing their role as decomposers. At 540 million years ago, the Cambrian explosion filled the seas with an astonishing variety of new animals, from early fish to arthropods, in the fastest burst of diversification in Earth's history. By 450 million years ago, trilobites and tardigrades had spread, tiny animals able to survive extremes of heat, cold, and radiation. Early crustaceans swam in shallow waters, ancestors of today's crabs, lobsters, and shrimp. Plants began to spread across the land, greening the continents and transforming the atmosphere. Oxygen levels rose sharply around 440 million years ago, reaching above modern levels and fueling larger, more active animals. The first insects appeared during this time, small six-legged arthropods that were the first animals to colonize land. Ray-finned fish appeared, a lineage that would become the most diverse group of vertebrates on Earth. From lobe-finned fish came the first tetrapods, four-limbed vertebrates that would one day walk on land. About 440 million years ago, Earth entered the Andean-Saharan Ice Age, a glaciation linked to one of the earliest mass extinctions of marine life. Early scorpions could breathe both in water and on land, making them the first known air-breathing animals. Amphibians spread into rivers and swamps, while the first reptiles appeared, laying eggs on land and breaking free from water for reproduction. Cycads arose as some of the earliest seed plants, with palm-like leaves and cones. Insects like the giant dragonfly filled the skies, with wingspans over 80 centimeters, their size made possible by high atmospheric oxygen. Pelycosaurs, sail-backed synapsids, dominated the land as top predators and early relatives of mammals. By 330 million years ago, Earth's landmasses had fused into the supercontinent Pangaea, surrounded by the vast ocean Panthalassa. Therapsids appeared as mammal-like synapsids, with upright limbs and differentiated teeth, ancestors of mammals. Gorgonopsians, saber-toothed therapsids, became apex predators with powerful jaws and long canines. The Kuru Ice Age, which occurred 300 million years ago, covered Gondwana in massive ice sheets, impacting climate and biology. About 250 million years ago, massive volcanic eruptions in Siberia released huge amounts of greenhouse gases, heating the planet, acidifying the oceans, and and depleting oxygen. This catastrophe, known as the Permian extinction, wiped out around 90% of all species on Earth. After the catastrophe, theropsids rebounded, with groups like cynodonts spreading widely. Rhynchosaurs and Plateosaurus became abundant Triassic herbivores, often dominating plant-eating niches. Early crocodilians appeared as archosaurs, close relatives of dinosaurs, already showing the body plan we know today. The first true flies evolved by this time, mastering agile flight with a single pair of wings and halteres. By 230 million years ago, the first dinosaurs appeared on land. Ichthyosaurs swam in the seas, pterosaurs took to the skies, and turtles and early teleost fish joined the scene, while tiny morganeucodontids marked the dawn of mammals. Small shrew-like mammals lived alongside lizards and triconodonts, while bees, ants, and the feathered Archaeopteryx emerged, bridging reptiles and birds. Around 180 million years ago, Pangaea broke apart into Laurasia in the north and Gondwana in the south, as pine forests spread and the first palms appeared. By 170 million years ago, carnosaurs, sauropods, and other giant dinosaurs dominated, while smaller theropods like early raptors also appeared. The first flowers appeared about 130 million years ago, reshaping ecosystems through rapid reproduction and close ties with insects. By 70 million years ago, dinosaurs had diversified into their greatest variety, from horned triceratops to swift velociraptors and towering sauropods. A 10-kilometer asteroid struck Yucatan, forming the Chicxulub crater and triggering the Cretaceous Paleogene extinction that wiped out about 75% of species, including all non-avian dinosaurs. Placental mammals spread into new niches, rodents and primates appeared, penguins took to the seas, and groups such as creodonts, cetaceans, equids, and eagles began their evolutionary paths. About 50 million years ago, the collision of tectonic plates pushed up the Andes and Himalayas. By 45 million years ago, massive plumes of the tiny Furnazola in the Arctic Ocean drew down huge amounts of carbon dioxide, cooling Earth and helping shift it toward today's icehouse climate. By this time, elephants, bears, cats, apes, canines, hippos, and bats had all appeared, shaping the modern mammal lineages. Whales fully returned to the oceans, while mammoths, polar bears, dolphins, megalodon sharks, giraffes, and giant ground sloths like Megatherium later emerged as Ice Age icons. By 20 million years ago, Antarctica was sealed under a permanent ice sheet, isolated by the circumpolar current and locked into a deep freeze. From 6 million years ago, bipedal hominins like Ardipithecus and Australopithecus appeared, followed by Homo ergaster and Homo erectus with larger brains and stone tools. Around this time, the Mediterranean Sea nearly dried up during the Messinian salinity crisis, leaving vast salt plains until the Atlantic refilled it. Beginning 2.6 million years ago, the Pleistocene Ice Age brought repeated glacial cycles as humans like Kenyanthropus, Boise, Rudolfensis, Habilis, and later Floresiensis evolved. Around 2.5 million years ago, a nearby supernova may have bathed Earth in cosmic rays, possibly influencing climate and evolution. Homo heidelbergensis gave rise to Neanderthals in Europe and Homo sapiens in Africa, while both species overlapped and interbred for millennia. About 100,000 years ago, Homo sapiens began migrating out of Africa, spreading across Asia, Europe, and eventually the entire globe. Some 42,000 years ago, Earth's magnetic field flipped temporarily, weakening the shield against cosmic radiation. By 10,000 years ago, humans had developed complex language, settled in villages, and built the first cities, launching recorded history. The universe's history is a testament to the incredible journey that has led to our existence, condensing billions of years of cosmic and biological history into one image required nearly a year of research, design, and revision. The idea behind this poster was to compile as much as possible of this complex journey into a graphic that can be understood at a glance or contemplated in detail as it hangs in a living space. The composition was revised by researcher and biology writer, Professor Rasmus Grunfeld-Vinther. The graphic is available to explore in detail, download, and as physical prints at bit.ly/Nature